cut through some of the fog out there that we pick a side. You know, we tend to in strength and conditioning say, I'm this guy or I'm this girl. This is my side. This is what I do. Well, no, we got to do it all.
With all that's going on in the country and in the world, I think you need to know what your mission is. I think you need to know what your why is. And I think above anything, you got to understand what you stand for.
I'm more interested now in being a difference maker that won't fade. So helping our athletes to become better husbands, fathers, and to be a positive voice in our community is what matters most to me.
I have a long-term vision for the program. It wasn't about me or my qualifications, but I felt that I had a big picture vision that would add value to our department and improve our staff culture.
So if I say the right verbiage and I use the right drill, man, you can make magic happen.
After we'll start on up here. Guys, welcome to All Access. I want to thank you all for being here. Before we start up, I just want to give a couple friendly reminders. All of our shows are on indianastrength.com. So if you go there, we have not only the full shows, but we actually have everyone's kind of categorized that there's a drop-down menu. If you wanted to hear a certain person, click that and you'll be able to go right to the YouTube page on there. So I encourage you to get out there and check those out because there's some really, really good content that's on there. The second is we're always looking for feedback. We've got a lot of emails over these past few weeks about what we could do better, maybe some different topics. I encourage you to please go in there and let us know how to make this show better. Let us know what we could do to continue to keep this growing. At the end of the day, we're trying to make ourselves better and learn, but we're also trying to show our profession what we actually are and what the impact that we make on everybody's lives. And then the last one, if you just want to join, you want to be a speaker on this show, please inquire, send us an email, let us know. We would love to have people on the show. We are booking up as the entire summer is coming to a close. We have speakers that are all kind of lined up. So please let us know any of those things and we'll kind of go from there. But let me jump into a quick intro and then we'll get everything rolling here. Starting off the show today is going to be Coach Cliff Marshall, our very own men's basketball strength coach, an absolutely incredible guy that's going to have some really great stuff to say. Following that up will be Becky Bonaventura from Rutgers, Lee Taft, the godfather of speed, which I was going to say a close friend that lives only a few minutes up the road, now dropped the bomb on letting us know that he's going to Florida. But Coach Taft is a wealth of knowledge. And then Candace Walls will be finishing up the day from Louisiana Lafayette. And so we're excited to have this group together. I'm going to turn this over to JD O'Brien with our first intro for Cliff Marshall. So JD, it's all yours, my man.
All right, guys. So today I have the honor of introducing one of our first guests, Cliff Marshall. Cliff is the Director of Athletic Performance for the Indiana men's basketball team. Prior to his stops at IU, he worked with the Louisville Cardinals, the Cincinnati Bengals, and Ignition Athletics Performance, where he served as the director for 10 years. Cliff has worked with hundreds of professional and collegiate athletes throughout his strength and conditioning journey. If you get the chance to visit Cliff and you walk into his office in Indiana, you get a chance to see all of the wall full of pictures of all the people that he's worked with throughout his career. But what out trumps that about Cliff is just who he is as a person. Cliff is a man of faith. He works for a number of non-for-profit organizations across the country. To his athletes, I believe Cliff is just way more than just a strength coach. He's an advocate of not only training the body, but the mind and the spirit. And I think that's what makes his training plan something truly special. You can find Cliff in his free time, spending time with his wife, Stacy, and his two kids, Mary Grace and Harrison. He's the ultimate family man, whether it's his most recent Corona projects he's thrown on Instagram or he's fishing with the kids or what Cliff likes to call it, ripping lips. He's an all-star husband and father. So without further ado, it's my absolute honor to introduce my mentor, my friend, my brother in strength, Cliff Marshall.
Wow, thank you so much, JD, for that introduction, man. I greatly appreciate it. You know, today I'm talking about passion and purpose, and the one thing that I learned from the last couple off seasons that JD has helped me out training the men's basketball team is he's a young coach, but he's full of passion. So thank you, JD, for that. I also want to thank the IU Olympic staff led by Tom and Chris Virtue, and you guys for just getting this all access show built. Man, it's a blessing locking arms with you guys and learning together, and then also just building better athletes together at Indiana. So thank you guys for having me today. I'm going to talk today about becoming a purpose-driven coach. And I say becoming because it's what I aspire to be. I've learned a lot over my 20 years as a strength coach, but this is something that's near and dear to my heart. So I'm excited for the next 10 minutes to share with you guys. The one thing that I would start out with is passion. Again, what passion, the dictionary for passion is a known or strong liking to, a devotion of activity, or a concept. So early in my career, probably the first 10 years was the passion for learning strength and conditioning. So it's the X's and O's, right? It's talking about periodization, and it's talking about Olympic lifting or high intensity training. And I still have that same passion. You know, as a matter of fact, right now I'm learning about Dr. Yes's 1x20 program. That's what we're starting our off season with at Indiana basketball. So I still have that same passion. My passion is teaching and coaching. And I would say if you're on this call today, you probably have that same passion for teaching and coaching. But I also want to talk about purpose. And purpose is known for the reason for which something exists. So asking the question, why do I exist? Or what on earth am I here for? And I ask myself that question very often. There is a book called The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. It changed my life in 2008. I've shared it with many professional athletes and colleagues, and it really helped me identify my passion, but also my purpose. And what I've learned is my passion is being a strength coach, but my purpose is being a life coach to 18, 19, and 20-year-old men. And I'm going off notes here, guys, because I want to stay very structured to the 10 minutes. So a coach's impact, Billy Graham once said, a coach will impact more people in a lifetime than most people will in a year. And my high school football freshman coach, Ben Pumphrey, in 1996 gave me the best advice ever. He said, be the best Cliffy Marshall you can be. And I've never forgot that. And the impact that he had on me is the same impact that I want to have on my athletes. I want to share a quick story. I call it my aha coaching moment. In 2012, I took 15 or 20 NFL draft prospects to Naples, Florida. And I took them down there to prepare them for the NFL Combine that is taking place every year in Indianapolis in February. And we had just finished up a training session on a Saturday afternoon. And as our players were getting in the ice tub, I overheard them talking about going to rent jet skis that evening. And one of those players had a bum shoulder. He was coming off of shoulder surgery, and the NFL Combine was the following week. So I told these players, I don't think it's a good idea if you guys go rent jet skis. Why don't you find something else to do, like go fishing or whatnot? Unfortunately, 3 of the players didn't listen to my advice, and they went out and rented jet skis anyway. 7 p.m. on that Saturday night, I was sitting at the Cheesecake Factory with my wife having dinner, and I got a frantic phone call that one of the players was missing at sea. They had found his jet ski floating in the Gulf, and they hadn't seen him for 2 hours. So they called in fire and rescue and life emergency. They brought in helicopters, and they were searching the Gulf to see if they could find him floating anywhere. 10 minutes before they called the search off, before it got dark, they found him floating in the Gulf and rushed him to the hospital. Thank God he ended up living, and he ended up telling the story of what happened. He went so far out in the Gulf, his jet ski went off the GPS tracker, so nobody knew where he was. While he was out there, he jumped off the jet ski to use the bathroom in the water, and as he was trying to get back up, he pushed the jet ski away, and a wave took it. So he floated with 2 hours of time on his hands, and he thought that he was facing death. And as he shared this story with me, it really changed me as a coach, because I had to ask myself, was the result of the 40-yard dash, the vertical jump, and the bench press that we had trained 2 months for more important than the relationship that I had built with this NFL player named Chaz Alexa? And so for all of us, I think today, we have to realize that the finish line is 6 feet underground, and that my coaching priorities have to be that of an eternal perspective. So I'm all about now building relationships before I build the results. Coach Archie Miller, when he was hired in 2017, in his press conference, he said, Cliff Marshall is a difference maker. And when Coach Archie said that, that quote hit hard to me, and it really fuels me every day to ignite my athletes to become the best version of themselves. Now, let me say this. I think Coach was probably talking about me getting the athletes faster, stronger, jumping higher. But what I've learned as a coach is that stuff fades. I know it's important, and I know that's why they've paid me to be the strength coach at Indiana, is to get results. You know, it's about getting them bigger, faster, stronger. It's about winning more games. But those wins fade, the 1-rep maxes fade, the NFL Combine all-time records that I was able to help athletes have, that all fades. I'm more interested now in being a difference maker that won't fade. So helping our athletes to become better husbands, fathers, and to be a positive voice in our community is what matters most to me. I want to break generational curses. And what I mean by that is my first year at Indiana, we had senior day. 4 out of our 5 seniors didn't have a father at the event. So when they walked out onto the court, they walked out with a mom and maybe a grandmom, or a mom and a grandfather. That right there tells me all of us on this call as coaches, be it male or female, we have an opportunity to break generational curses in our athletes. So there's 3 steps that I've learned to becoming a purpose-driven coach. I think the first step is teaching beyond the sport. And the second step is building relationships before results. And the third step is training the athlete like he or she was your own child. So how do we teach athletes beyond the sport? I'm at step 1 here. The first thing that we do at Indiana basketball is we start every workout on the grease board. Now, when I got to IU in 2017, the first thing that I asked for wasn't new dumbbells, wasn't barbells or plates. It was a grease board. And the reason being is every day before we start a lift, I tell the athletes on the board what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how it will make them become a better athlete. Within that, I've started a Life Strong series that will oftentimes be a quote or some form of motivation to help our athletes. It's our opportunity as strength coaches to teach life beyond the sport. Number 2, I teach our athletes toughly. What I mean by that is I try to hold our athletes accountable. And in 2019, we started something called the GRIT scoring system. And I worked with Coach Luke Day, who's the head strength coach at Marshall University for their football program, on this. And he was a co-worker of mine at Ignition. And it's really just this scoring system of holding guys accountable. Every day they're graded in 6 different areas. Some examples. Was your body weight in check? Was you on time? Did you have positive energy during the workout? And if there's anything that they struggle with, it opens up an opportunity for me to talk to those athletes. At the end of our off season, we grade up the points and we award an off-season champion. So that's our GRIT scoring system. Last but not least, we teach our athletes honestly. So what I mean by that is we have to have the hard conversation, and something that I've done is as I'm coaching an athlete up, be it on the court or in the weight room, I try to give a positive followed by a negative followed by a positive. I call it the Oreo cookie effect. So I'll speak a positive comment, a constructive comment, followed by another positive comment. And I think there's life and death in the power of the tongue. And what we say as coaches really matters and how we coach our athletes matters. So again, talking about teaching beyond the sport, teach them daily, teach them toughly, and teach them honestly. Those are my 3 steps. Number 2, build relationships before results. And I really hope that this can help some people today, because I didn't realize it until later in my coaching career that rules without relationships will equal rebellion. I'll say that again. Rules without relationships will equal rebellion. So Coach Chip Morton, he's been a strength coach in the NFL for more than 30 years. He's probably one of my biggest mentors. He told me years ago about the 5 love languages, and it's a book written by Gary Chapman. Now, it's a marriage book, and my wife and I actually did this in our marriage counseling, but now I use it in coaching. So there's 5 love languages. There's words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, giving gifts, or physical touch. And there's a survey you can do with your athletes that will tell you what is the athlete's love language. And so in 2019, I did this with our team, and 70% of our players, their love language is quality time. So that means individually, I need to find time to spend with our athletes. The second ranked love language was words of affirmation, which tells me that I need to be speaking life into my athletes as much as I possibly can. Building relationships before results is what I'm talking about here. Tom Allen, our football coach at Indiana, I met him my first year in 2017, and we had this discussion, and he said, Cliff, one of the things that I do when I meet with each individual football player, I ask them, what are the 3 most important things in your life? And as they list those, it opens up opportunities for you to have discussions about those things and to also hold them accountable. Another step, spending time outside of the weight room with your athletes is important. That's how we build a relationship. So for me, I try to take our athletes fishing, if that's an interest, golfing, if that's an interest, maybe sitting down and just having a meal. We do an optional game day chapel that I'm always at, so I can spend time with our athletes outside of the weight room. Now, let me preface it by saying this. I'm dealing with 14 athletes this year. So I have a good amount of time to invest in each of the 14 guys. If you're a football strength coach, you have 114. So that's much different, and I understand that component. One of the best parts of my job at Indiana basketball is the fact that I get to spend time programming and building relationships with 14 guys. So step 2 is building relationships. Step 3, my final step in becoming a purpose-driven coach, is training the athletes like they're your own child. So I have a 9-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. And when my kids grow and, Lord willing, become athletes, I want them to be safe. I want them to be loved. I want them to be pushed, and I want them to be taught. So when I meet with our players on an official visit, I get an hour with them. And I also get that time with their parents. And when I sit down with the parents, I go over this results and relationships protocol that I believe in. But now, once I present it to them and the player commits, is the hard part. I must hold myself accountable every day to live out the words that I'm sharing with you. I think the other thing, as we're talking about training the athletes, one of the things that I've tried to do better over my coaching career is I've got to love the walk-on, just like I love the 5-star McDonald's All-American. They both deserve to be treated fairly, and they're both made in God's image. You guys have heard it before. Athletes don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And early in my career, I stated it a while ago, it was all about X's and O's. It was all about the training periodization and this, that, and the other. But what I've learned is the athletes that I'm training don't care about the big exercise science terms that I'm using. They don't care about the program design that we're using. They simply care about how the coach is going to interact with them and really how the coach is going to love them. I think that we have influence over our athletes as college strength coaches, but also if there's any high school strength coaches over there, the same, and even pro athletes. I think it's our job as strength coaches to influence the influencers. I'll say that again, to influence the influencers, because the athletes that we are training have influence in their communities. And that's our job, to train these athletes up. My final slide here: results build a program, but relationships build a legacy. Results build a program, but relationships build a legacy. In 2007, I wanted to launch an NFL training program at Ignition. There was one problem. We had no results and we had no testimonials. So it took one athlete trusting our program. That athlete led to one more athlete, to one more athlete, to one more NFL athlete. And in the 10th year of leading that program at Ignition, we had at least one client on all 32 NFL rosters. We had some of the biggest names in NFL, like Luke Kuechly and AJ Green. We had trained more than 300 pro football players by the time I left. And as I reflect back to 2007, how we couldn't even build a brochure for our program, it just reminds me that if you treat your athletes right, you will reap what you sow. And they'll trust you. And I'm humbled by the trust that my athletes have given me since 2007. And it's just a constant reminder, again, that if we want the athletes' trust as coaches, we have to earn their trust. I hope I stayed under 10 minutes. That was my last slide there. I hope that you learned something today about becoming a purpose-driven coach and the 3 steps that I use. And if you guys want to reach out to me via email, my email address is cliffmars@iu.edu. I have a PowerPoint on this presentation that I could certainly send you guys. Thank you so much for your time.
Awesome job, Cliff. Loved it, man. So I train women's basketball at Indiana. So Cliff and I share a weight room there, and I can say, since he's gotten here, I have enjoyed my time spent in that weight room in my office exponentially more than what I did in my first year with the team. And it's just from having conversations with Cliff and spending more time with him. So thank you for coming on, Cliff, and I love the talk. So I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker, Becky Bonaventura. And she is currently an assistant strength and conditioning coach at Rutgers University, where she trains women's rowing, women's golf, and women's tennis. She's also been very involved this summer in what's called the Summer 2020 Coaches Circuit, which is essentially just an online internship program that has schools from throughout the entire country putting together different talks. And it's really giving these interns a very unique experience to help them get their foot in the door and get started in the field of strength and conditioning. So Becky, I know that you're about 39 weeks pregnant right now, and I saw that you had a little bit of a false alarm yesterday, so I don't want to take up any more of your time. And so I'm going to hand the floor over to you, and hopefully you don't have the baby during this call.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you to everyone at Indiana Strength for this platform. I know week after week I have really enjoyed getting to listen to each and every of the speakers, and today I'm thrilled to be able to talk to you guys a little bit and share about something that I am very passionate about, which is developing a positive staff culture within a strength and conditioning department. So to give you a little bit of background of who I am and where I am coming from, I grew up in Northern Virginia. I'm one of 9 competitive siblings. We all played sports. Doesn't matter what it is. If it's card games or backyard volleyball or cornhole, we're going to compete. We're going to know who won. And I played soccer at Waynesburg University. During my undergrad, I quickly learned that in order to be successful in this field of strength and conditioning, I needed practical hands-on experience. And so I sought out mentors at some great programs. I interned at JMU, Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning, Northeastern University, ProMotion, Princeton University, along my journey, as well as completing an internship, a graduate assistant position at St. John's University with the Strength and Conditioning Department. before taking on a director of sports performance role in the private sector at Williams Sport Training here in New Jersey, before finally being able to break into the ranks of full-time collegiate coaching at Rutgers University. This is my first full-time year at Rutgers, and I've been blessed to work with 3 incredible teams with great coaches, women's rowing, tennis, and golf. Outside of the weight room, I'm married to a college wrestling coach. We are due, Kevin, you're right, we are due a week from today with our first. And after being a college athlete, I knew I needed something else to compete in. So recently I've taken up sprint triathlons, and it's a fun challenge for me. Open water swimming is a real big challenge. And so that's been fun to overcome. But diving into our topic for today, why this topic? Why are we talking about positive staff culture? Throughout the different internships and universities that I worked at and companies I've worked for, I've experienced both positive and negative staff cultures. And I found that this topic is something that is widely discussed, both at conferences as well as throughout interview processes. Everyone wants to know, so how is your staff culture? What is it really like to work there, and who are the people you work with? And I want to share today about some recent adjustments that we've made at Rutgers University that have had some really positive outcomes and results. And so in order to dive into this, I need to take you back to December, to my first mid-year review at Rutgers University with my supervisor. And throughout that process and that conversation, he shared, hey, you've been doing a great job. We're really happy with your performance here. And I shared that I was really happy at Rutgers and it was a great place to work. But he asked me a fantastic question. And he asked, what, if anything, would make you consider leaving Rutgers? What, if anything, would make you feel like this was no longer the place for you? And so I shared with him that the only thing that I could foresee that would make me want to leave Rutgers at that point in time was if I felt like I was in a box, if I felt like there was no room for me to grow within the department. And so as that conversation continued on, we talked about the opening of a position. Our internship director was soon to be leaving. And so that role was going to be opening up. And so I shared that I was very interested in taking on that role. And as a result, he asked me a really good question. He asked, okay, Becky, I understand that you're interested in this, but why you and no one else? You've been here for 4 months. Why you? And I explained that it was 100% not that I was more qualified or that I deserved it more than anyone else. It was simply that I have a long-term vision for the program. It wasn't about me or my qualifications, but I felt that I had a big picture vision that would add value to our department and improve our staff culture. And how we would do that would be to reorganize the structure of our internship program to get everyone on our staff involved. Up to that point, it had been more of a one-man show. And so I wanted to see how we could get every single person on our staff, from director on down to every single assistant, involved in that education process. And I felt that that would be a huge factor in improving our staff culture. In the background behind that conversation, the needs analysis that I had just thought through on my own was that at Rutgers University, we have fantastic people working there, up and down the strength and conditioning staff. But in my first semester, I felt like we were working in silos. And as a result, we weren't really tapping into and utilizing the strengths and unique skill sets of each person on our staff. I found that, I must not be the only one that is looking for other opportunities for growth. And I felt that this shift in our internship program design would be a fantastic outlet and way to foster ownership, pride in our department, as well as give assistants, associate directors, everyone the opportunity to teach as well as to learn. So thankfully, my supervisor didn't call me crazy. He listened. He recognized that this role would indeed play into my strengths of organization and communication. And this allowed for the cultural shift and positive changes that we have experienced as a department as a result. So what guided my vision was reflecting on the current situation that we had going on at Rutgers University, as well as the past experiences that I had had at all the different universities and companies that I had worked for. It took envisioning what a positive staff culture at Rutgers University would look like. and then developing and following through with a plan. What made it successful was me taking initiative, but also doing the work and acting the part of internship director before the title or compensation matched the level of effort, the amount of time that I was really putting in. And in reflection on why this worked and why this has had such a positive impact on our department, I found that in thinking about it, it wasn't so much, it had very little to do with the internship program itself and what we have in our curriculum, but everything to do with what we as people, what we as strength and conditioning coaches need and crave as humans, employees, and leaders. As humans, we have basic physiological and safety needs. We also want love, family, community, and belonging, but also respect, achievement, self-actualization, as well as a feeling of importance. It has been said that the deepest urge in human nature is the desire to be important, as well as the deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. As employees, we want those basic things such as salary and benefits, but also a sense of belonging, appreciation, value, and autonomy. We want feedback. We need opportunities for growth, to have a sense of ownership, as well as feel that our unique skill set is valued and utilized. You may have heard before that people don't quit a job, they quit a boss. And a study by the Harvard Business Review found that, well, that's not completely accurate. They completed an engagement survey and found that when there were employees that they wanted to keep and that ultimately they ended up leaving anyway, they left when their strengths weren't being used and they weren't growing in their careers. So my question for you as strength and conditioning professionals, we are all leaders in various capacities, whether you're the director or the associate director or the assistant or helping manage interns. My question for you is, are you operating as a team or in silos? And why is that? Is that because you've determined that that is the best course of action for your department? Or is it something that you fell into because everyone on your staff gets their own stuff done? They're autonomous. But what would it look like for you to really work together? And how much do you have to learn from those you work alongside with? What unique interests or specialties do your coworkers, employees, or even your interns have? And how are you tapping into those talents? My question for you is, what does leading look like in your situation and environment? Because I don't pretend to know what your unique situation is and what that will look like for you, but I hope that you recognize that by not doing it all yourself, you add value to everyone around you, you help them grow, and you give them a sense of ownership and belonging. A great leader does not do it all. Thankfully, I think for most of us on this call, college group projects are over. We don't have to do it all anymore. Great leaders provide opportunities for growth, and they unleash the potential of everyone around them. Some current examples, the first example that I gave at the beginning of this presentation, talking about our Rutgers internship program and how changing the structure of the internship program and getting every single coach on our staff involved in the feedback process, in the curriculum process. Everyone on our staff presents and shares and gets to know our interns. I also found in reflection that this platform, Indiana Strength All Access, is another perfect example of allowing every single person on a staff to shine. It's not the Tom Morris show. Every single assistant and person on the staff is a part of it. They get to introduce each speaker each week. They're a part of the social media promotion. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about, leading by allowing others also to shine and show their strengths. Key takeaways from today, I hope you just think about the coaches on your staff and think about them first as humans and consider, how are you showing them that they are important, valued, heard, and appreciated? Secondly, as employees, how are you providing them not just that salary, but providing them with autonomy, room for growth, feedback, and belonging? And finally, as leaders, how are you providing opportunities for others also to lead around you? So our topic today was developing a positive staff culture, and what makes a positive staff culture? It comes down to a few things. It comes down to people. It comes down to the assistant coaches identifying where they can make an impact and stepping up before the title or pay match that responsibility. This goes for interns as well. Where can you make an impact? Where can you step up within your role? It takes directors recognizing the needs and unique strengths of their staff and providing room for growth within the department so they don't look elsewhere, and you can keep them and you can grow and become a better department than you ever could if you are trying to do it all. It also takes everyone looking for and acting on ways to make the department better. One of my mentors, Johnny Parker, shared this with me in a conversation a few weeks ago. The most important job in the world is the one you have right now. So I would encourage you to think not that, hey, hopefully someday I'm going to work at a university or a company where there's a positive staff culture. I urge you to look around right exactly where you are and think, how can I step up? Where can I make an impact? In what area can I show my strength and contribute? Don't look for the grass that's, green, always going to be greener on the other side, but how can you plug in and make an impact as the youngest person on your staff, as an intern? It doesn't matter. How can you make an impact right where you are? If all of these people do these things, that is going to bring about that positive staff culture that everyone talks about. These are some of the sources coming from How to Win Friends and Influence People, those different quotes about the importance of people and how they want to feel important, as well as the Harvard Business Review study that I mentioned. I want to thank you all so much for listening today. Thank you for your time. Thank you to Rutgers University and my entire staff. Thank you for trusting me with this role of internship director. Again, it's not about me, it's about you. It's what we can do collectively that matters. And that is what has made such a big impact this past year. And thank you to Indiana Strength for this platform to allow all of us in this field to come together and not be competitive. Yes, we're in the Big Ten, but we can learn from each other and make each other better. And thank you very much. Have a great rest of the presentations.
Well, I'm sure you all felt Becky's passion in that talk, and thank you, Becky. Incredible, incredible work. I mean, she is the definition of professionalism and creativity, and she's been such a joy to get to know throughout COVID. Thank you, COVID. I probably would have never met Becky, or maybe just not this soon. And just a little bit about her. She is so professional that she created a pre-recorded recording of this in case that she did give birth during it. So this just speaks a lot about her. She's a great person. I would highly recommend getting to know her. But I hope I can do this justice by introducing our next speaker, the godfather of speed. And Lee Taft is an incredible man with an incredible resume, which you all can definitely find out everything that he's done. But what I wanted to touch on with Lee was kind of what we were talking about beforehand with Tom and before the show started, is this man has come down to Bloomington countless times to not only spend time talking to our staff and teaching us, but he comes down even when we're having other speakers come in just because he wants to learn. He is a constant growth mindset. He wants to learn as much from you as much as you want to learn from him. And I tell you what, almost every single time he's come down, either one or both of his daughters has been there. And so that just speaks a lot to him as a man and who he is and what he's about. And so we are very lucky to have had him in the state of Indiana, and we're going to miss you for sure, Lee, but know that whenever you come up, you have a place to stay for sure. So I don't want to take any more time. So Lee, it is all yours.
Oh, thank you so much, Lainey. I appreciate all of you so much. Wonderful talks. I hope I can do justice with my 10-minute talk here on change of direction. And thank you to IU Strength and for doing this. This is wonderful. The more we can reach out and help coaches, the better this profession is going to be. So what I wanted to talk about was change of direction and kind of cut through some of the fog out there that we pick a side. You know, we tend to in strength and conditioning say, I'm this guy or I'm this girl. This is my side. This is what I do. Well, no, we got to do it all, right? We got to be great at change of direction. We have to have open skills and we have to have closed skills. So we have to have reactive training. We have to have rehearse pattern, because when I rehearse, a pattern, I get to challenge physiological demands, right? I get to challenge capacity of tissues. I get to challenge repetition at hitting proper angles and proper foot positions. But then at the same time, if at some point I don't get some reactivity in there, the athlete loses context as to why is this drill helping me. So when I make them react and they struggle, I can instantly say, see what I mean? You have to be able to stay in the tunnel, or you have to be wider, or you have to control your shoulders. So what I thought would be really cool and fun is, let me share a couple drills that I like to do that can address those two categories, that open and that closed type of training, and some drills that you can influence your athlete's movement with through repetition and through proper cueing. So if I say the right verbiage and I use the right drill, man, you can make magic happen. So let me make sure I got everybody in the picture here, or you guys can see me. I think I'm good. Okay. So one of the first things that I like to do is I like to use a little box. So I've got this little box. It's literally plywood. It's a 2x10, and I have a 3/4 inch mat on it, and it's used for lifting blocks. So when we do Olympic lift, it's just one of the levels. So I love it because it's only about 2.5 inches. So what we're going to do, and what should immediately come to your mind is, well, I don't have that, but I have Olympic lifting plates, which are awesome to use. So you don't need this, you just need something. So one of the first drills I like to do is I like to have my athletes understand what it's like to create immediate contact with control with what we call a split step. So we're starting in an athletic stance, we load the ankle, we load the hips, and then on my command, we simply split home and they stick. Now, if you look at this, you say, well, yeah, that's kind of a landing drill, but your knees are awful. Well, no, I'm not teaching landing. I'm actually teaching force application in the angle to start teaching reactive change of direction. So watch, if I were to take this drill and just simply push myself in one direction, it now becomes a very reactive change of direction. So let's think about this. If I'm marking a soccer player, if I'm guarding a basketball player, or defending a wide receiver or running back, and all of a sudden they change directions. A lot of times I don't have the privilege of using all the footwork that we used on that 5-10-5 training, or the shuttle drill where I get to plant my inside foot, then my outside foot. Sometimes I just have to plant quick and change. Okay, that's a reactive repositioning, which gets me to immediately change mass and momentum and go in a new direction. But let's say you don't have enough time, like you can't get outside because you got a big weightlifting day, or you only have a little bit of time for some speed. Well, why don't you do like 5 to 8 sets of 5 seconds of these? But if I want to influence a side of the body, have a partner, put a band around them. Now, when I do this, my left leg is getting very little. My right leg is taking the load, so I can safely and effectively work on changing direction by influencing momentum artificially. So very, very simple to start working on hitting the proper angles, and it's safe. And especially coming off COVID, athletes probably haven't loaded their tissues a lot. This is an awesome way to get them back into it. Now, let's say you want to work on the controlled work that you might do on a 5-10-5 where the penultimate step, so that step before the step, right? That penultimate step hits, and then I hit, and then I open and I push off. Maybe I want to work on that in a very controlled manner. Let's use our low box again. Now, when I go to shuffle across, this leg will replace this leg, and then this one becomes my redirect leg, right? So I go from here, I hit, and I switch. Then I can do the same thing going back. So in essence, I'm working on inside, outside, and then reposition back the other way. So it's a very safe, very subtle way to get what you want without overloading their tissues. Then what we do, we get rid of that. We grab our cones, we set them up, or we put them on a line and say, hey, go to that 5-yard or go from baseline to foul line. And when you get there, I want you to plant, and then I want you to push off. Now I can start to build actually mass and momentum forces to be able to train the athlete to manage those forces with proper angles, right? And then I can come right back with my partner, grab a hand. Now whether I'm working lateral or shuttle run type angular change of direction, I can come right back in there and get them to have to fight this mass and momentum with tilting reflex, right? So as I feel this, what do I want to do? I want to tilt away from it. So when I start doing that here, that lends itself to me being able to get in on great angles, but more importantly, get out on great angles. Let me show you one more thing. So we tend to focus a lot of our time, we tend to focus on the lower body with change of direction. But I'm going to tell you what, a perfect foot plant with bad shoulder position immediately makes the foot plant bad, okay? So if I plant like this, and that angle coming up through and goes out my front shoulder, that's perfect. That's the force application angle we want. But what if I go like this? Now I get a lot of valgus strain, I get a tremendous amount of groin strain, and I just open up, and the only way I'm going to change direction is probably to stutter, repossession, and then go. So let's train that, right? So if I go ahead and I take my medicine ball, and if I want to work on what we call shoulder sway. So shoulder sway is this. Athlete plants, but they just can't quite hold it. So let's do it reactively. And this is neuromuscular reactive training, right? So I'm going to take the ball, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring it above my head. So now I'm strictly in the frontal plane. So now I just go from top of one ear to the top of the other. Because what does that mean, coaches, right? If you say, hey guys, go from shoulder to shoulder, where do they go? They go way outside shoulder, right? So if I go ear to ear, they'll end at the shoulder, and that's really where I want them. I just don't tell them that. So we start here. Now I begin to recruit before I actually plant. That's when we save ourselves from the drastic injury, right? Now, what if we have an athlete that does what I call shoulder dump? We plant. Now the shoulder peels inward, right? So we plant and we do that. This is when we take our ball and we go diagonal. Start high. And if I recruit and I turn on foot contact, man, the kinetic energy that I gain, that I receive, and that I release allows me to be able to get maybe a couple reps here, get rid of it, then have them plant and go, and it's like magic. All of a sudden, you get a clean, smooth athlete that can withstand forces and change the direction becomes a positive, not a negative. Okay, guys, I think I stayed under time. Hopefully that was helpful. I know I loved it. I seem to be the only one breathing hard, but that's okay. Thanks, guys. I appreciate all of you.
Lee, I'll speak for a lot of people. I'm breathing a little bit hard as well. My heart rate went up just watching you move, man. For those of you that haven't, I'll plug Lee real quick. If you haven't checked out some of his Speed Insider work, I know I've done some courses and our staff has seen him at work multiple times. Do yourself a favor, check it out. It definitely will change how you approach some of your speed training. Our next guest, I can definitely say that our relationship hasn't been built yet, but that's one that I'm looking forward to developing. But I first came across who she was in 2014, and picture me just still new to conferences and things like that. She was sitting on a coach's roundtable, and I just remember that being at that point. And then fast forward years later, she's contributing and just impacting things such as the Merge and on different podcasts and things like that. For example, Coaching in Quarantine by Play. And the last thing I talked about in my presentation was success leaves clues. And so when somebody pops up that many times over the years with something, you know that they've definitely got a lot to contribute to this field. They've got a lot to contribute to just the lives of those around them. And they're obviously leading by example in so many ways. So I'd like to introduce our next speaker. She is the Assistant Director of Athletics for Athletic Performance at University of Louisiana at Lafayette, Candace Walls.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I just kind of want to give a shout out to some of these speakers that spoke. Like Coach Cliff, your presentation about passion and purpose. I'm very spiritual. My dad was a minister, so that speaks volumes to me and kind of what I do. The 5 love languages. It's the first gift that I got, my significant other on our anniversary, and I was like, read this. It's gonna help you figure me out better. But I hope my presentation kind of ties in to really what my purpose and my why is in my life. And I think we're all given a mission. Coach Taff, we call you the speed guru, but they talked about how great of a father you are, And I want to say, you're down in the South, please grab a gator, come down to Swampville. We'll welcome you with open arms. I'm sorry, Indiana, we stole them. And Coach Becky, I just want you to know your baby is going to be born on the best day ever. July 2nd is my birthday. So fingers crossed that it lasts till that, day. And then hats off for you for the virtual internship. They spoke on the merge, it's not an easy task. So I appreciate you kind of pushing our field and giving opportunities, to our next generation. And Indiana Strength, this is amazing what you're doing. I feel very blessed and honored that you guys asked me to be on here. William, I actually remember you a couple times after you called me. I was like, wait a second, I think I know him. And I'm like, yes, I do. So I appreciate you guys for, taking time on a Wednesday. And let's, not to be silly here, but I'm going to change direction a little bit, no pun intended. And I'm going to share my screen for this presentation. I'm glad this is on Zoom because I don't hear if you laugh or not, so it doesn't hurt my feelings. So let's go here and let's get started. Okay, so leave it better than what you found it. People ask people all the time what their why is, what makes you get up in the morning, what makes Candace Walls get up in the morning. With all that's going on in the country and in the world, I think you need to know what your mission is. I think you need to know what your why is. And I think above anything, you got to understand what you stand for. And I choose for mine to be this. Wherever I go, I choose to leave it better. And that's going to be through the energy that I bring, through my thoughts, through my actions, and the way that I treat others. Now, I'm not comparing myself to this woman at all. There's no way any of us can. I'm never expecting anyone to be a saint. But Mother Teresa said, I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast stone across the waters to create many ripples. Now, yes, I, Candace Walls, from middle of nowhere, Kentucky, from a mid-major down in South Louisiana, I'm going to choose to throw a stone. I'm going to pick up the biggest damn stone I possibly can, throw that sucker, and watch the ripples go. And the way I'm going to choose to throw my stone is going to be something my minister of a father taught me that I kind of didn't hear in that moment, but I'm seeing more now. And that's do unto others as you would have others do unto you, Matthew 7:12. So you're asking yourself, how does this apply to performance? Guys, it applies to everything about performance. We work with humans, and that's student athletes, that's coworkers, that's administrators, that's human beings that you meet within your life. I mean, are you kidding me? Back in 2014, Williams bringing up an incident when I was at that table. What if I would have come off in the wrong way? What would that have left in kind of his mind about me? And guess what? These humans we work with, our sons and daughters, Coach talked about that in the first presentation. And guess what these sons and daughters are made up of? Different races, different genders, and different sexualities. So I want you to remember the golden rule isn't a light switch. You can't turn the sucker on and off and choose when you want to use it and choose when you don't. And you got to ask yourself, is the way you're treating maybe that student athlete, is it different based on their sexuality? Is it going to be different based on their gender? Is it going to be different based on their race? And if so, ask yourself why. And once you ask that question, the next step is going to be, okay, what are you going to do to change that? Now, remember, I'm a huge believer in the person you are makes up the coach you are, the husband you are, the wife you are. That person you are makes up every facet of your life. And like I said, it's not a light switch, right? So many of us say, well, you know what? I treat all my student athletes the same. but are you applying that into your everyday life? This applies to the coaches you interact with. This applies to the administration that you work for, you work with. This applies to others in the field. Isn't it easy to, I don't know, talk behind another person's back, or, oh, well, you read an article, so this is what you assume about them. So are you applying this to the people in your life? And it's human code, man. This applies to everybody you come in contact with. So ask yourself, is the way you're treating others, is that affected by gender, race, or sexuality? If so, why? And then how are you going to change that? Now, it's easy to say this, it looks good on paper, it sounds great in a presentation, but how the heck am I personally and the people that I'm coming in contact with actually applying this? Because we love tangible things. We're coaches. We love to process, we love to program, we love to see the results, right? We're performance coaches. So some examples of how we're going to create ripples and what we have been doing using this golden rule. It starts with the problem that we were introduced with in the spring of 2020 with COVID. This affected everything in our lives, from personal to professional. And our staff decided to utilize our social media platform so we could give something to the student athletes that if we were in their position, we would like to have, going back to that golden rule, right? And it seems so small, but this small step and this small ripple allowed us to connect with our student athletes, not just them, but our community. It allowed us to connect with our university. It allowed us to connect with our fans. And along the way, it taught us some really cool things. We learned Photoshop, which I know it's 2020 and you're like, Candace, everybody knows it. Not really. It taught us how to cut films, and it showed us a way to communicate, which now moving in the future, if you don't learn how to evolve and adapt, you get left behind, right? So this new kind of virtual space and communication, it taught us how to do that. Now, so what ripple did this make? It gave our student athletes, our administration, and our community something to look forward to daily. And even if it was just a 20-minute training session, even if it was some silly thing on our feed, it gave them a moment where they didn't have to think about COVID, guys. We treated them like we wanted to be treated. And in return, we got the biggest win ever. We got to build better relationships. And like Coach said, it's relationships, not results. And those relationships build those results. And we're performance coaches. So we need to make sure that we're constantly doing that. Now, a second way we're causing a ripple is another problem we saw in the field. It was the lack of development in our field during COVID for the up and coming professionals. And we all know how important our internships are. I mean, could you imagine not having that opportunity when you were in their position? How would that have redirected your path in your career? I know it would have completely changed mine. The biggest parts that made me up who I was were in those moments where I was working for free and I was learning everything I needed to, and I was excited about. Those were the moments that I think I was built as a coach. So what we wanted to do, like we said, golden rule, is what would we love if we were in their position? So bam, the merge was born. And we wanted to create the merge to be able to create this hope in a time where people didn't know what their next steps were. And we knew that it was going to take more than one person. It was going to take more than one group. So what we did is we merged 4 universities together, hence the name, the merge. And then we also decided, why try to not surround yourself with others that are better? Like, surround yourself with experts and other professionals in the field. This is going to create this opportunity for these young professionals. It's going to make it even better. And honestly, through creating this platform for these up and coming professionals, is all about teaching them, right? Well, it taught us. It taught us to work well with others in the field. It taught us so much about ourselves that we're still learning, because we still have 4 more weeks of it. So it's funny how helping others helps yourself as well. And the last example I'm going to bring up is something that honestly wasn't even our idea. It stemmed from our athletic director. He brought in our director of diversity and inclusion to speak to our department and our student athletes, to simply just educate us. Now, through this, listening to her, it made us think, wow, what a better way to push this golden rule than to educate. Something simple as just educating on words that maybe you're not familiar with, situations, and how to have that uncomfortable conversation with individuals. Because we thought back to the fact that we work with so many different races, genders, and sexualities. How are we not going to educate ourselves on how to interact appropriately? So we invited her to share the knowledge on the merge. She did an amazing job, which we also decided, we had a presentation last week that we did with Georgia Southern, and she came on there and presented. We literally changed her presentation the night before, and we just were like, we're gonna go with this. And then we also decided to help her kind of create this curriculum so we can have, after breakdowns, you always talk about nutrition, we always talk about performance. Why not educate our individuals and ourselves on this topic, diversity and inclusion? So another part that we thought is, if we want to be able to provide a safe space for student athletes and co-workers to feel as if they have a voice at the table, we have to educate ourselves, because an uneducated voice is a dangerous voice. And bottom line, moving forward, you're going to have uncomfortable conversations. There is no option anymore moving forward. Evolve, adapt, or be left behind. So through education, guys, comes empowerment. Through empowerment comes change, and through change comes hope for a better tomorrow. Now, what's crazy about all these examples, about these ripples that we're trying to send out, or these acts of kindness, or the golden rule, is that it changed us and it left us better. And it's crazy how that works, right? The golden rule simply means to love each other. And love, by definition, is the commitment to the well-being of others without conditions. So I want to challenge you guys. What ripple are you going to make? What's going to get you up in the morning? Doesn't have to look like what we decided to do. It's got to fit your situation. It's got to fit your personality. It's got to fit the need that you currently have. But bottom line, you got to be a good human. You got to love each other and just leave it better than how you found it. So I appreciate you guys for giving me this platform to share this message. I appreciate every person that is part of that stone that we threw in to let these ripples out. And if you guys need anything, feel free to contact me. My phone number is 254-749-1170. Once again, it's 254-749-1170. And I say that because Johnny Parker one day was on a presentation. I was 22 years old. I didn't know him, and he gave me his phone number. So if you guys want to call me, feel free to text and call me. I think one of you Indiana staff members realize I'm a terrible texter though. But call me, text me, I'm here for you. But, you know, I think to move forward and to make this world better, you got to be a good human, love each other, and leave it better than what you found it.
Candace, that's absolutely beautiful. And I love it. Helping others helps ourselves, because that's what we're all trying to do. You know, we're trying to help others to help ourselves continue to grow and get better, and to make this world a little bit better. I want to give a big round of applause to all the speakers today. Absolutely. The takeaways are endless, and to go through it, I think I could talk for another 10 minutes just on what I learned just from that. So I want to thank you all again. Next week's 4th of July weekend. We don't have any speakers scheduled, but what we're going to do is we're going to put together kind of a highlight reel of the last 7 weeks and some of the biggest takeaways. So it's going to be really exciting. And then we're going to pick it up again on July 8th. So again, I want to thank you all for being here. Please check out indianastrength.com, check out the videos, and continue to keep spreading the word and get out there and make today better than yesterday. Thank you all.